Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to our board meeting tonight. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below, or at Dejan, you can go to the corner of the room to get translation. We're heading into our closed session for tonight, but before we do, we are here to listen to any public comment there might be about our closed session items. The public gets 2 minutes for public comment per speaker. The closed session items that we will be discussing tonight are let's see, conference with legal counsel, liability claims, public employment appointment, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, and complaint, and that is it. Staff, do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you very much. We will reconvene for open session at 6:30 tonight. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to our board meeting tonight. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below, or at Dejan, you can go to the corner of the room to get materials. We are returning from closed session after our opening procedures. The public will have the opportunity to make public comment. The board has changed public comment format. We have opportunities on non-agenda items in person, through the Zoom app, and by telephone at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last 1 hour. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. If you are attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item. After it's been turned into staff, they are placed in the order of when they are turned in. We also call on speakers one at a time and alternate between public comment at Dejan and on Zoom. If you're participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking the appropriate icon in the Zoom app, or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. No yielding of time or substitution of speaker is permitted. The public will also have the opportunity to make public comment on agenda items after the staff presentations for each discussion and action item. The public will have 10 minutes per item and 1 minute per speaker. Due to the Brown Act, members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Now let's move to our opening procedures. First, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. If you are willing and able, please rise.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We are now moving to our land acknowledgement. May we pull up the video, please?
We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenko, Wampanoag, Caravan, and Lower-Licking peoples, and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy.
Thank you very much. Those were Pinole Valley High School students. We're now moving to the labor and body recognition. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today, of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and the undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. We're now moving to the West Contra Costa Unified School District's School Board Anti-Racism Statement. The West Contra Costa School District Board of Education is committed to the work of anti-racism, the conscious and active effort to identify, challenge, and correct racial inequities in the systems and institutions within our schools and the community. Racism, explicit or implicit, stands in direct conflict to the fundamental principles of WCC USD education. To carry WCC USD education into the future, we recognize that we must continually renew and reflect on the roots of racism and develop new ideas to meet the times. Unjust ideas and policies and the racial inequity they produce have shaped us, our schools, and our society. We strive to uncover unconscious biases and practice anti-racism as individuals and as board members. We challenge ourselves to persist through the discomfort necessary for growth and learning, to deepen our listening and our examination of racism and oppression and to develop strong understanding of how our personal experiences and feelings fit into a larger picture of continual oppression. Each member of our school board individually and collectively is responsible for creating and nurturing an anti-racist learning environment where each student, staff member, and community partner is respected and valued member of the WCCUSD community. We are uniquely positioned, and it is our responsibility to identify and dismantle racist ideas and inequitable policies in ourselves and across the district. Therefore, we commit to supporting anti-racist policies, programs, and practices for our children's education and well-being while building strong and inclusive school communities. We commit to holding each board member accountable towards these goals and moving the work of anti-racism forward. We also commit to holding West Contra Costa Unified School District staff, students, and communities to living the standards of the anti-racism in our schools. Dr. Hurst, could you please do roll call?
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. President Smith Folds,
Good evening, everyone present.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Good evening, President.
Trustee Reckler,
Good evening, I'm present.
Trustee Christian,
Good evening, President.
Trustee Phillips is absent at the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We are now moving to B6, report ratification of closed session. Dr. Hurst, do you have a report out?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Agenda item A 2.3, the board voted to approve the appointment of Dr. Allison Huey as the Director of Research and Reporting. The vote was as follows. Trustee Christian, yes. Trustee Reckler, yes. President Smith Folds, yes. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, yes. And Trustee Phillips absent for this vote. Agenda item A 2.4. The board voted to approve the termination of a certificated employee from employment with the district. The board members voted as follows. Trustee Christian, yes. Trustee Reckler, yes. President Smith Folds, yes. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, yes. And Trustee Phillips absent. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hurst. We are now moving to B7, WCCUSD public comment. How to address the board. Members of the public are invited to speak to the board about any matter that is not otherwise on the agenda and is related to issues affecting public education in WCCUSD. Public comment will last approximately 60 minutes. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. Individuals wishing to speak must submit a WCCUSD public comment form, or if participating via Zoom, individuals will need to raise their hand in the Zoom app. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Staff, do we have public comment?
Yes, we do. Our first public comment is Kim Chamberlain.
Good evening. I am Kimberly Chamberlain, IFPTE Local 21 SSA Chapter President. Tonight, I'd like to give big kudos to all of our school staff. We're in our second week of school, and we are really kicking it into gear and doing a great job. Have a little stress out there, making sure we have enough places and smiles for all of our students and parents, but we are doing a great job. I am seeing some real positive challenges being met for making sure that students are adequately taught and placed in the classroom in a timely manner. So thank you to all of our school sports staff. And I also want to thank all the district support staff for helping us out there. Now, flipping that hat around, I have my Student Information Services Supervisor position hat on now, and ed benefits. So we are really kicking it into gear. We are at 60% as of about 15 minutes ago when I printed this out. So we are really doing a fantastic job. Some of our school sites that are doing overwhelmingly well are Pinole Middle School. Jenny Vasquez, I know out at that school site, has really been calling and having her staff call and really kick it into gear, helping us out. We also have our high schools that are really kicking it in. Richmond High, is doing a fantastic job also. So it can be shown that we can really get those schools going. I appreciate it. Greenwood has one student that has not filled it out yet, and I think they just enrolled today. So that's the only reason. Other than that, everybody else at that school site has completed their ed benefit forms and their annual forms also. Annual forms, which gets our contact information up to date, is coming into gear too. And I will say those school sites are pushing those so they have proper information in the system. So thank you, everybody. Keep supporting our schools and getting those ed benefit forms done. Remember, 100, not 90. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Delon Harrison. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much. Last night we had a hard struggle. I appreciate all the board members who worked and talked with the parents and met with me. I appreciate Dr. Hurst for reaching out. You guys did a good job. I really do, for listening to the parents. We don't feel that this is over with. There is a lot of game we still need to do as far as addressing our LCAP. But I do appreciate you all making a good effort, our board making a good effort, and our superintendent making a good effort to hear the parents. And like I said, we have a lot of work still to do, but thank you all for making that good effort and putting forth some work to engage us intentionally, on purpose, authentically. We appreciate that. We really do. And I thank you. I'm complete.
Our next public comment is Lucas Menenix. My apologies. David Bellew. Please unmute yourself.
Well, once again, the West Contra Costa Board has let this district down. The school year has just started and Steege is closed, and we're spending money without a budget because the board has failed us all. The structural issues with our budget shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Enrollment is down about 2,000 students from just 4 years ago, and attendance is also significantly down. The district has been fortunate in due to a lot of one-time COVID money, they've been able to kick the can down the road in terms of any staffing reductions until this year. However, 2 of our current board members, trustees Gonzalez-Hoy and Smith-Folds, voted against all of that one-time money. So it's awfully hypocritical for them to now be pointing fingers at other board members when this district would certainly be under state receivership right now had they gotten one other board member to go along with them 3 years ago. The district is currently under oversight from the County Board of Education because this board has failed to make the hard choices that are required. Aside from our structural deficit, one of the reasons Lynn Mackey pointed to when placing the district under oversight was the meeting a couple years ago in which Mike Fine from FCMAT tried to address the board and the public, but was given basically no time to talk and was repeatedly interrupted. Well, he was back last night and we all saw how that went. Every member on this board deserved to get taken to task by the head of FCMAT, as they were last night. But instead of taking any hard lessons from this, our board president appeared to just use her comments to strongly imply that the head of FCMAT was being racist. I gotta be honest, I really don't think that's the wisest course of action to keep us under local control and out of state receivership. Please stop with the personal attacks and grandstanding and do your jobs. Our kids deserve so much better. I'm done.
Our next public comment is Kellen O'Connor.
Can you hear me? Awesome. Thank you. Board members, I'm here tonight and I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I'm actually a coach of a spring sport and potentially if it happens. And that the uncertainty there is the biggest difficulty right now. I completely understand there's a lot of hard decisions that have to be made and cuts are going to have to come from somewhere. I'm back here because I went through the school district K through 12, went on, I've been an engineer since I graduated college, but in 2018, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to coach again. And so every year since then, I've been coaching, with the exception of that one complete bye year for COVID. Our sport's been happening every year, and I'm hoping to keep that going. My ask is that, because I understand this is a kind of a 30,000-foot issue, and I'm asking about maybe $7,000 a budget, and every little bit counts. I completely understand that. But my ask is to enable staff to be as creative as they possibly can be. I understand there's a lot of laws to follow, but if there's any creative funding we can do, if there's any way to fundraise, especially for athletics, it's hard to fundraise for state mandates, but for something like athletics, people might be more willing to donate for that year by year. So anything you can do to support staff and enabling them to make as few cuts as possible this next year and then going forward. I understand it's a structural deficit and cuts need to happen, but yeah, appreciate any consideration. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Ellen Bailey. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Ellen Beaulieu, and I am a parent at Harding, and I want to start with the positive and thanking the Harding community for the excellent start of school and the wonderful leadership of our interim principal. Really appreciate the work going on, and my kids are having a great start at school. This next comment is directed directly to the board president. You have a job. Your job is to review critical information about how this district runs and help the board review that information and make critical decisions that make sure all students in this district have a local school that they get to go to, and that local school has a budget, and that there are programs at that local school for the beautiful children who go there, and that those schools are safe. You're not doing your job. Stige is closed, and you haven't approved a budget. You deserved every bit of the tone that FCMAT official gave you yesterday. I always tell my students, don't be the student who makes me add one more policy to my syllabus. You're making the state of California add legislation because you put the LCAP so late that it was do or die, it was brinksmanship, and that wasn't clear whether we should vote on that or not because there was real concern from the parent community. Your posturing around anti-racism, in my opinion, seems purely performative. I need you to turn it into some substantive anti-racist action by helping to pass a budget that helps our schools run and helping all schools stay open and run safely. Thank you for your leadership of this board. I know it is a big task, and I appreciate the board doing the work of keeping our schools open and safe and running programs that help our children. Thank you.
And our last public comment is Maisha Harris Gash. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody, and happy week 2 of the school year. My COVID babies are seniors this year, and every time I see them, I just get so giddy because I just remember when they came back, they had on masks, and then they didn't have masks, and I could see their faces mature. So I'm just super excited for this class because of what they went through middle school, and now they are going to be graduating seniors. I also want to take this time. So I have quite a few freshmen this year. Some of you know I'm a special ed teacher, resource specialist. And so the first week and so has been a little bit challenging for my freshmen because I tell them, I say, I know I'm different. But today, 2 of my freshmen, it's starting to click. I ain't your bro. Every time he say bro, I'm like, Miss Gash. My name is Miss Gash. And today he corrected himself before I even had to say anything. So it's the little things that our students do. Catch them doing those little things. And I pointed that out to him. Like, okay, I see you. And then even leaving my classroom, put your desk underneath the chair. I ain't nobody's maid. And today, before I could even say anything to him, he got to the door, he turned around, he came back, and he put his chair under the desk. I was like, I snapped my fingers like, okay. And like, he was like, bye, Miss Gash. In my head, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not broke no more. And so these are the things that give me joy. These are the type of things that just every day I'm like, they're getting it, they're getting it, they're getting it. And so I just wanted to share, I guess, my joy in these first 8 days of the school year, because our young people are so important. And each and every day when they enter and exit our classrooms, they need to know that they're important. They need to know that they are seen. And so I just wanted to share my little bit of joy with all of you. So have a wonderfully blessed night.
Our next public comment is Danielle Jorgens. Please unmute yourself.
Hi there, good evening, board and members of the school district. I commented last night about the LCAP because it seemed like it was in disarray. Then I did a big deep dive into what's been going on, and holy smokes, what a mess. I second what's been said already about the disorganization, the lack of community involvement. It's disgraceful. Why is our district in this position? And why is the alternative to saying yes to the LCAP going into receivership? Even if we say yes to LCAP tonight, we have, what, 3 years of runway of our reserves? And then what? It seems like the board is really intent on hoping and wishing for some angel investor to materialize from the sky and come and drop $60 million every year into our lap. It's not going to happen. And I don't know why there's not realistic kind of lenses put on this whole budget, the district itself. Who's managing this? Who let this get so off the rails? It's unbelievable. If a business ran like this, it would be closed. Why are we allowing our school district to run like this? And the really messed up part is that it's not like, you know, you guys losing your stipend as school board members is the important part. The school kids are getting hurt. Our children are hurting because of this. You're putting into a huge, you know, throw up in the sky whether or not there's going to be anything happening for them in the spring. It's just unbelievable. Why are you doing this? It's just ridiculous. And even if you say yes tonight, you better come up with a plan for what happens next. Do your jobs. Thanks.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so very much, staff. We are going to not do B8. We're pulling it. Board, we are going to B9, agenda review and adoption. If there are no objections, Trustee Reckler.
Point of order.
What's your point?
I believe minutes were skipped.
Let's see. Nope, they are after the adoption of the agenda. They are B10.
I'm sorry about that. Thank
That's
you.
okay. Do I see any objections to the agenda review and adoption? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted. We are now on to B10. Trustee Reckler, do you have anything in the minutes?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Give me just a second here. I have 2 corrections, please. The first one is for the August 7th meeting, and it's for B6. There's one report out missing from closed session, which is in closed session, the board took action to adopt the recommendation of a hearing officer as its own regarding the discipline of a classified employee with the following modifications.
Hold on one second, Trustee Reckler. You said August minutes?
I believe it's August 7th.
Because we're looking at the approval of minutes for June 26th and July 17th. So on the agenda, I don't have August 7th on mine. Do you have August 7th on yours?
August 7th is on the online agenda.
It's on the online agenda? Is that a paper? Did you print yours from
Yeah, I did.
offline? Just one second. Hannah says the agenda that we have out today, does it have August 7th on it too? It's not, okay. But it's posted online, so we can go with that. Please continue. Thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Reckler, if I may, that item was we took no action. If I recall correctly. we
May
did-
I read my statement, please, because I reviewed the video?
Okay, sure. You don't have to be rude.
May I read it? So from the video on August, I believe it's August 7th, there's one report that's missing from a closed session report out. And what the superintendent reported, because I saw the video, is in closed session, the board took action to adopt the recommendation of a hearing officer as its own regarding the discipline of a classified employee with the following modifications. The board determined an amount of back pay due the employee. The vote was unanimous with trustee Phillips absent. Now, if I may, go on to July 17th. For E3, the contract for Olinda Elementary, my vote shows not recorded, but I wasn't present for the meeting, so I'm unsure what the difference is between not recorded and not present, but I was not present and all other votes show not present. Should the board approve these, I will email them in so nobody has to take a bunch of notes. Thank you.
Trustee Reckler, let me just review. On July 17th, you need your vote to say not, or it needs to indicate that you were not present at the meeting.
Yeah, so I don't know what the difference is between those two, but the rest of the votes say not present. This one happens to say not recorded, so
And
I just wasn't at the meeting, so
And then on August 7th minutes, is the report out?
that's correct. There's one that was missing from closed
And
session.
that's the one that you just read?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other adjustments to the minutes? Seeing none? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll go ahead and move the minutes with the corrections to August 7th and July 17th, as I previously noted.
Is
I'll
there a
second.
second?
Second.
Thank you, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy. Any comments? No, let's go straight to the vote. Trustee Reckler, your vote?
Yes.
Trustee Christian, your vote?
Yes.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, your vote?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. We are now moving to item C, consent items. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't have anything to pull, but I would request a roll call vote because I'd like to vote no on consent. Rather than pulling everything, just for the speed of saving of time, I'd like to vote no. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on consent?
President, I'll make
Yes.
a motion that we approve the consent items.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. To the vote. Trustee Reckler, your vote?
No.
Trustee Christian, your vote?
Yes.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We are now moving to item D, the superintendent's communication.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Can we pull up the superintendent report, please? If we can go to the next slide. The district would like to take time to recognize the contributions of members of our school community who have passed away. I regret to inform you that longtime El Cerrito coach Frank Milo passed away on August 1st, 2024. Frank coached for 20 years at El Cerrito High School, leading the Gauchos to win 8 league titles, 3 section championships as runner-up. He retired from coaching in 2002 and was selected as one of the top football coaches of the 20th century by the Contra Costa and Alameda sports writers. Coach Milo will forever and always be a Gaucho and a legend at WCC USD. Please join us for a moment of silence. Thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide? As Kim Chamberlain shared, we're in our second week of school. A lot of things are going extremely well, and we wanted to just share in pictures some glows for back to school, especially the first week of school. If we can go to our next slide. You can see some of the classrooms, the first week of school. Teachers teaching at the very bottom. The second one from the left is at Hercules High School. Of course, you can see Betty Reed Soskins as well. And then you can see me and the vice mayor in front of Hercules High School at the bottom right. Next slide. Here you can see a praying mantis activity. And this is at our temporary campus, the Stage Stars from Miss Perez first grade class, and also Miss LaFoss's second grade class got an impromptu lesson led by Mr. Iwaki about praying mantis and their lifestyles. Next slide. Also wanted to share with you at Fairmont Elementary a mindfulness activity and students practicing mindfulness. Next slide. And also we wanted to share, we visited, the executive team made 111 visits the first week of school. That means a number of sites were visited more than once by our staff. We wanted to make sure that we were out in full force supporting all of our school sites. And I wanted to just share with you that there is also a report, a survey that was sent out to all of our school sites about the school year. And if we can go to the next slide, then I'll come back to this one. You can see that 80% of principals that took the survey reported that this year's opening was very smooth. It's consistent with what Ms. Chamberlain was saying, and it's consistent with what we heard when we were going around to all of the school sites. And practically every school site was saying it was a smoother opening this school year. So 80% of the principals reported that this year's opening was very smooth. 25% of those reporting it was saying that it was the smoothest opening that they've experienced. And then you can see some glows as well. A lot of comments about the appreciation of central office being out in full support of our school site, and our administrators were very appreciative of that. Now go back to the previous slide. So the question may come up, why was this year smoother than previous years? One, there was a very clear focus on what we're going to do and accomplish during the summer. Our team worked together practically every single day for more than 3-4 hours a day on different summer projects and summer work. A lot of the focus was around vacancies, what was going to happen the first week of school, what would support look like as well at the school sites. And we implemented, especially the first week of school, what we called huddles. So our team huddled every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was an opportunity for us to get ready for the school day and really look at vacancies across the system and making sure that we were prepared and supporting our school sites. We also had a second meeting every day as well at 3 p.m. And this was an opportunity to do what we call a hot wash of the day. And it's just another fancy term for a debriefing of the day. And the protocol was simply what happened throughout the day, so providing a summary, but then going around all the executive cabinet members and including the executive directors, what went well, what were the glows, and then what were the grows as well? What are the things that we need to do better going into the next day? So this type of planning, meeting every day, and doing these huddles, we were really able to come into the school year fully prepared And we believe that's why we had the high percentage saying that it was a much smoother opening this year than many had ever experienced. So go to the next slide. And the next slide. We also wanted to share some important dates to remember that's coming up. August 29th, elementary school, back to school nights. Excited about that. September the 12th, middle school back to school night. September the 26th is high school back to school night. And then, of course, we want to remember September the 2nd, Labor Day holiday, district holiday, no school, and district offices will be closed. Next slide. And that concludes my superintendent report. Ma'am, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hurst. Do we have any questions from the board? Seeing none, we are going to move on to E, action items. We're going to start with E1, the 24-25 single plans for student achievement, the SPSAs. Ms. Ziegler, this is your item.
Thank you. So this is an item that will require the board to vote on it separately. You are being asked to approve the allocation of $3.8 million in local control funding and $4.5 million in Title I funding. These funds are allocated to our school sites who write the single plan for student achievement to outline their vision and initiatives to improve academics that go along with the funding. These plans include annual measurable outcomes based on local measures for each goal. They address the needs of all students, especially those at risk of not meeting the state standards. They're developed and improved by school site councils in consultation with ELACs and APACs. The public is able to access and view these plans on the district website. Upon completion of the draft SPSAs, district staff reviews them to ensure that appropriate elements are addressed and that plans are aligned with the district's instructional focus areas. The district has completed its review and confirmed that they meet these requirements. Therefore, on behalf of Dr. Hurst and the district administration, I'm requesting that the board approve the SPSAs listed in reference, and I am now available for any questions you may have.
Staff, do we have any public comment? Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Thank you. Board, do you have any questions? We're going to do 3 questions, 2-minute comments. Seeing no questions, we are now moving to a motion. I'm sorry, go ahead, Clerk Gonzalez-Loy.
I was going to introduce a motion.
Oh,
That's
thank you,
okay.
sir. Go ahead.
I move that we approve the SPSAs for Bayview, Fairmont, Lupine Hills, Madera, and Murphy.
Perfect. Is there a second? I'll second that. Now we're moving to comment. Any comment? Wait for the clock, Trustee Reckler, and go ahead. 2-minute comments, please.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about Bayview for a minute and that I'm really pleased that this partnership between the JMP at Elstree High School and Bayview is happening. And many years ago, I had suggested that the JMP act as like a hub and a spoke, and I was really thinking of Fairmont and Harding and Stige, but we ended up at Bayview, and I think that's just fabulous. And so I'm very appreciative of that. And if you read their SPSA, they also are getting a lot out of it. So I just think that's wonderful. And one thing that I do need to point out is that the files for Fairmont and the file for Murphy do not seem to be attached and can't be opened. And I'm sorry, I just discovered this as I was sitting here. Somebody released the funding sheet for Fairmont so I could see that, but those SPSAs cannot be reviewed because they don't seem to be attached. And so I'm going to vote in favor of them. But if those could please get opened up so that people can take a look at them. Thank you.
Any other public comment or any other board comment? Go ahead, Clerk Gonzalez-Loy.
Thank you, President. Ms. Ziegler, thank you for bringing this forward to us. I was actually also going to comment on Bayview. As you know, I taught at Bayview, so I always take a very detailed look at their plans. And I just wanted to give them kudos for their goals and how they're looking at the issues that they're facing. It is one of our lowest performing schools with the most retention issues. So I think that they're being really thoughtful with their plan under the leadership of the principal. So it was really nice to see the detail they put into the work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll go straight to the vote. Trustee Reckler, your vote.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips, your vote.
Yes.
Trustee Christian, your vote.
Yes.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, your vote.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you so very much. We are now moving to E2, adoption of the 24-25 Local Control Accountability Plan. Ms. Ziegler, Ms. Catherine, this is your item, please.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. President Smith-Folds, members of the board and community. Yesterday, on Tuesday, August 27th, our district team presented the Local Control Accountability Plan, which included the annual review of our previous goals and actions. We also provided a presentation of our LCAP 2.0. At the end of that presentation, we provided a QR code for the public to submit questions and feedback. And tonight, we will address this feedback and questions that were submitted. We're going to present our local California dashboard indicators, and we did include the full presentation of annual review and LCAP 2.0 in tonight's agenda, but we're not going to be reviewing it because there have been no changes to the presentation. So we're going to begin and pass it to Ms. Ziegler to review the public feedback and questions.
Thank you. And just in hindsight, our LCAP Town Hall was on August 6th. So this link and QR code has been open for public to give comments since August 6th. In that time, we've received one question and one comment. The first question was a question about if we responded to public advocates. So we are interpreting this question to mean the May 18th letter that public advocates sent to all California state superintendents. That letter was really advocating and pushing that it is imperative that districts present both the equity multiplier goals and all student groups or areas where students are in the red on the California state dashboard. We did present that both on August 6th and last night. So we do believe that we've met this requirement. There was also a comment urging us to look at assessment beyond iReady, which is something we can continue to do. And then also expressing feelings about our process and a desire for us to find a way to work together productively. And so we will do that and continue. Since then, there's been some additional asks for clarification just around data use. And so we do want to clarify that the written LCAP document does use 22-23 data from the dashboard per state requirements. The presentation given last night and on August 6th contains 23-24 data in every case that we could provide 23-24 data. We also want to restate our commitment to monthly meetings with monitoring data. We understand that, at the end of a school year, getting a presentation with 5,000 data points is overwhelming and it's hard to digest. And so we are looking forward to partnering and providing high quality data in bite-sized chunks so that really the community can walk alongside us in making decisions in the best interest of our students. With that, I will pass it back to Ms. Acosta-Verpraskis.
Thank you. And if we could pull up the presentation. Next slide. And one more slide, please. Okay, so tonight we're going to be presenting our California dashboard local indicators. Local indicators are based on priorities from our local control funding formula that the state doesn't already collect data for. Local educational agencies, LEAs, are responsible for self-assessing and reporting their performance on the indicators district-wide. The local indicators that are self-reported are basic services and conditions, implementation of state academic standards, parent and family engagement, school climate, and access to broad course of study. And districts can receive a met, a not met, or a not met in 2-year designation. Next slide. So today I'm going to provide you an overview of our local indicators. For priority 1, basic services and conditions, this is addressing the appropriately assigned teachers, making sure that our teachers have access to curriculum that's aligned and instructional materials, and also ensuring that the facilities are safe, clean, and functional based on view. For this, 100% of our basic needs were met by West Contra Costa Unified School District. For implementation of state academic standards, our rubric and self-reflection allows us to study 6 different areas with 23 sections, and a team from educational services sits and really thinks through how we have rated ourselves in the progress of providing professional learning for teaching, the instructional materials that we're providing our teachers, and the program that supports instruction district-wide. It is a rating scale from lowest of 1, exploration and research phase, to 5, full implementation and sustainability. And for this area, we had an average score of 3 of initial implementation. And had we been able to submit it on time, we would have met the standard. For parent and family engagement, it is a similar process where we ask the community engagement team to identify a team of diverse educational partners to participate in a process of self-reflection. They were able to do this process led by Ms. Martine, our Director of Community Engagement, and the standard met with the average items in the exploration and research area, which were 6 items, and then beginning and development area for 5 items. For school climate, this is a process of reflection that our Director of School Climate really leads. We study the California Healthy Kids Survey and analyze that data, as well as our local school data, to determine the progress that we're making towards ensuring that our students are in a predictable and safe school climate. As we presented yesterday, this is an area that we're really developing in. We've seen some strong reflections that suggest that we're creating strong conditions for students. However, our suspensions have also increased, and so we're really thinking about how we support our educators and our students. And finally, for priority 7, our access to broad course of study. This is a reflection that was led by Dr. Chilcott that really allows us to think about the different course offerings that we're providing to our students. And so, as you know, we've got a variety of course offerings that we provide both at the high school level and at the elementary level. And it ranges from providing IB at Pinole Valley and DLI in our elementary school sites. But we do feel confident and met the standard in terms of the broad course of study that we're offering our students. And part of the reporting process of these local indicators is ensuring that we do so and do so before July 1st. The last component, as I presented a couple of meetings ago during our superintendent's report, is that this has to be submitted by July 1st with the date of when our LCAP was approved. And unfortunately, since we did not have that date, we were not able to submit this. And after consultation with our Contra Costa County Office of Education, it is likely that our local indicators for all of these areas are going to be reported as standard not met, despite the fact that, as you saw, we would have met all of these indicators because self-reflection and reporting is the basic requirement of meeting met. And so we will plan to provide an optional narrative explanation for our educational partners to understand why it is that the standard is not met. Thank you. That completes our presentation for tonight, and we're open for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Let's go to public comment. Do we have public comment?
Yes, we have one public comment. Lucas Mananix.
I'll just start talking before the timer goes. Thanks, board, and thanks, district, for giving us the time to speak again. My name is Lucas Mendix. I am the chair of the DL CAPS committee. And I want to first kind of echo the gratitude that Ms. Salon expressed in her comment. Especially, I want to thank Mr. Costas Rasmus and Ms. Sigler for your partnership in moving us forward and having a more robust LCAP. I also want to thank the board members who have reached out to us to talk to us and to hear our concerns. And I appreciate us trying to find a way to move forward on this. We have sent Dr. Hurst and the district our list of commitments that we would like to see in writing for us to be ready to put this chapter behind us and move forward in partnership and in community to make sure that at the end of the day, we're doing best by our kids, and we're going to really see our kids excel here in the district. The one that I will continue to harp on is we need the detail behind the programs, and that's budget and that's implementation. And if we can get the commitment tonight to see that we will get that, then we are happy to support the approval of this LCAP. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Rodney Brown. Please unmute yourself.
I'd like to say good evening, board, Dr. Hurst, everyone involved. I want to express gratitude on behalf of everyone who's involved in this comprehensive plan, moving the needle forward in terms of the LCAP. We all understand the severity of it and what it means in terms of formulating the budget for the 24-25 school year. I think we've wasted a lot of time mitigating this circumstance. However, once again, those who are uniquely involved with it, hats off to you. I think collectively as a community, we can all come to a conclusion that will be favorable for all parties involved. So again, thanks a lot. Appreciate you all. God bless. Good night.
Our next public comment is Anita Summerlin. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you all for hearing my comments tonight. I appreciate that you all have come to this meeting with this information. However, I think that we also need to hold ourselves accountable. Accountability means that we also need to see more detail. There is not enough detail here for us to know exactly what we're going to do to improve the outcomes for our students. Our students, our kids are the most important thing to the community. We need to see more detail about what is going to happen at schools to improve the outcomes for our children, because our children are not meeting the outcomes. So I would like to see more accountability. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so very much. We are now moving to questions. Board, do you have any questions? We're going to do 3 questions. Go ahead, Trustee Reckler.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. For changes for 24-25 and really into the next 3 years, aside from the restructuring, this is moving here, this is moving there, what are the deep, meaningful changes in the LCAP specific to programs, people, actions that are either leaving or being added to, influence better outcomes?
Thank you for that question. In LCAP 2.0, we made a concerted effort to really be specific about the strategy. And so we've talked about how our LCAP really funds a lot of people. And so we tried to be really explicit in explaining what our people are going to do to be able to support student achievement and the improvement of authentic engagement and climate. Particularly when thinking about goal 3, some of the big changes that we're making that's within the LCAP is really focusing on tier 1 instruction and making sure that that first time instruction is really solid for our students. We're digging deeply into making sure that our central team and our site team is really data driven and leaning into that data to be able to provide different supports for our students, because we know that multi-tiered systems of support are essential to be able to intervene and accelerate for our students. And we're also working on building capacity. So we know our teachers and our educators in general, including site leaders, need to be on their growing edge and up to date with the latest research, and that's what our students deserve. So that kind of summarizes some of the strategies that we incorporated into LCAP 2.0.
Okay, thank you. And then for the parent engagement piece, for the recommendations that were already in place or are not being accepted, what's the communication strategy back out to those groups to let them know we're not accepting this because it doesn't fall within the purview of the LCAP, or more importantly, for the ones that are already in place where I believe you're probably doing something and they're not aware of it. Could you explain how that will be communicated or handled?
Yes, so we did respond in writing to all of the PACs, and the screen grabs that were in last night's presentation were exactly the document that they received a link to. So they received a letter, and that was a file that was linked so they could see it in writing in every place. Now, I do imagine specifically if they made the recommendation and we believe it's in place, they may want further clarity, and that's okay. We would welcome that feedback, and I think could build that into the first meeting.
All right, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Trustee Phillips.
Thank you. I saw a few emails about are asking about our obligations to students who fall into the red in those bands. So can you take a moment and just talk about what our specific obligations are? Well, let me do it this way. So I guess the first question is, outside of our general obligation to our students, right? Because we want all of them to succeed, but what are our specific obligations to the students in the red? And what are we doing to meet those obligations?
Thank you for that question. So very specifically, when I name that we're going to be data-driven as an organization, that is in an effort to ensure that we're really disaggregating the data that we have for achievement. So for example, if we're doing that with iReady, to be able to make visible which students are achieving and which students are not, because we know that it's essential for us to be able to analyze that data to make corrective instructional plans to ensure that students who are not where we want them to be are able to get there as fast as possible. And so generally what we do is we do a cycle in which we give an assessment, we study the data of that assessment, and then we ask our leaders and our teachers to make corrective instructional plans that really emphasize the students who are not yet where we want them to be. They make a plan around how they're going to achieve that. If most of the class didn't get it, then we need to do whole group instruction. If it was a small subset of students, we do small group instruction. And so this is the work that will happen with the support of our central staff and will largely live within our principal professional learning, which will happen once a month. And Ms. Sigler and I have really thought through how this happens both for the content areas that we support around literacy and mathematics, but also for attendance, for authentic engagement of our families, as well as climate data.
Thank you. Dr. Hurst, this question is directed to you. There is some history embedded in this question that predates you. And so I'm not asking you to account for something that someone else did, but the history is still in the context of the question. We've been hearing for years that we're going to be data-driven, and there is a reiteration every blood moon that it's happening. So my question is this: what's different this time? And I want to unpack that. I want to know what concrete things are happening and have happened. So parents, like myself, like President Smith Folds, parents that are watching, what concrete things are happening and have happened where we can say, you know what? They are really doing it this time.
Thank you for the question, sir. So one of the exciting things that transpired today is we actually approved the Director of Research and Reporting. And that is key in moving us closer to Goal 3. And we are actually talking about Goal 3 in the strategic plan because it talks about the ability to look at, analyze data. So before we can do that, we have to make sure we have that research and reporting director in place because they will be responsible for data warehousing, but also providing training and support and data as well. I think also one of the things that we have to do this year is making sure that we're training our principals to understand here's the various data types, and then also what are the protocols when we sit down to look at the data? What are those protocols to analyze data? So I think those are the exciting things that's happening this year and structures that we're putting in place where we really can say that we're building capacity across the system to really review and analyze data. So those are some concrete things that are happening this year.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you. Seeing none, is there a motion? Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, go ahead.
Thank you, President. So just to give context, the following motion, I collaborated with Trustee Christian on today, and then collaborated with the DLCAP leaders on the language, and then collaborated with staff on the language. And I believe we came to a consensus on something that everybody, I don't know if the word happy, but comfortable with for tonight. So I'm gonna read it, but I also asked Dr. Hurst and Ms. Cornejo if she could put it on the screen because it's pretty lengthy. So I'll go ahead and read it. So I move to adopt the 3-year LCAP as presented with the proposed additional requirements. Number 1, throughout the 24-25 school year, the WCCUSD staff will collaborate with the DLCAP committee to build trust and commitment from stakeholders for the benefit of the success of the LCAP implementation. Number 2, we provide our parent committee with the requested information in a timely manner as long as it's within the purview of the committee and is reasonable. As part of our commitment to the DLCAP committee, staff will present the committee with the calendar on when data, program metrics, and monitoring will be presented throughout the year. Number 3, we continue to provide space during our board meetings for parent committees to give us a 5-minute report if interested on a monthly basis. Number 4, a commitment to increase the number of DLCAP committee members to include a larger representation of stakeholders as written in their bylaws. Number 5, district staff will provide the board with progress reports in the months of November and March, specifically focusing on students identified in the red category on the California dashboard. This will ensure that we are actively monitoring their progress and addressing equity gaps. And number 6, lastly, we as a board continue to acknowledge, support, and appreciate the efforts of our staff, parents, and students in the creation and participation in this LCAP. We acknowledge that a lot of work, time, and effort and advocacy has been made and will continue to happen for the betterment of our students in WCUSD. And that is the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any, Trustee Reckley, you have a point of order?
I would like to ask a question about this motion, and then I may want to put a friendly amendment with it.
Ask your question.
The question is, I didn't hear money or monetary expenditures mentioned. May you address if there is a disclosure of monetary expenditures in your thought process anywhere, and can that be added if not?
Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, go ahead and answer the question.
Yes, thank you so much, President. Thank you, Trustee Reckler, for that question. It was one of the things that the LCAP committee had asked. After talking to staff, the belief is that is outside of the purview of LCAP, but Dr. Moses has committed that her department will provide that information. And I've actually already talked to, I'm so sorry, I forgot your last name, Lucas, that we would actually like to hold a joint committee meeting between the budget committee and the DLCAP so that they're able to get that data as well, alongside with the board members in that committee, which then would present to the full board. So I believe that it takes care of that. And I think it also makes staff comfortable with the purview of the DLCAP committee.
Okay, thank you. And may I discuss a friendly amendment?
You can ask for a friendly amendment to the one who presented the motion. Go ahead.
Thank you. May I? No later than June 2025, the board will complete work to review and revise any existing board policies related to the LCAP, and if necessary, adopt a new policy related to, but not limited to, the points aforementioned.
If Trustee Christian's okay, I think that I'd be fine adding that amendment.
I have a question, Trustee Reckler. When you say aforementioned, you're talking about the budget, or you're talking about everything that Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy and Trustee Christian wrote in?
Yes, I was addressing points 1 through, I believe, 6, right? 1 through 6. Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Christian, are you okay with the friendly amendment?
Yes.
President Smith-Folds, would you mind if we also asked Trustee Reckler if she could send it to the superintendent, that paragraph?
Yes. Trustee
Thank you.
Reckler, if you could please send your friendly amendment to the superintendent so he can add it into, if this is approved, into the motion that's in front of us. Thank you. All right, we are now on to, we had a motion, it was duly seconded. We are now on to comments. Do we have any comments? Okay, we're gonna do 2 minutes on the clock. We'll start with Trustee Reckler and work our way around. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
So again, thank you for all the work to revise this document. It is way better, really, way, way better. So I, again, want to recognize the amount of time and effort that was put into it. I know it was a heavy lift, and I really want to appreciate the work that was put into it. I want to encourage that this document, again, goes back into the strategic plan. There are many, many big cornerstones in here that are important, and it will really flesh that document out. I mean, it will immensely improve that document. I also made a few points about data. Like when you say increasing 6%, add from to, those types of things would make it more transparent. And then once again, I'm just not really sure about the money and the budget, but what I'm hoping is that very shortly, something will come forward that identifies $64.8 million in spending and not that added in 1.5 million, which I'm pretty sure doesn't exist or was already spent, because that'll give everybody a clearer idea of what, like where the priorities are in the document. And with that, I'm complete, and thank you.
Trustee Christian, wait for the clock. Trustee Phillips, you have something also? Okay, Trustee Christian, go ahead.
All right. Yes, I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. I want to thank Zalon Harrison. I want to thank Mr. Lucas, and all the parents and all those who advocated for our students in the district. And we appreciate all of that. And myself working with Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy and the parents. And so we appreciate your hard work and diligence to want to get this thing right. And so we appreciate each and every one of you. And I would just say together, we can win this and do this. Thank you.
Trustee Phillips, wait for the clock, sir, and then go ahead.
Thank you. Sometimes progress is not easy. Sometimes it's not pretty, and sometimes it could be downright messy. A few weeks ago, several board members, and I'm just going to say it, people can say what they want about the board, but several of the board members had the courage to vote no, or abstain. And because of that and the advocacy that went along with that and pushed that from community, we have a much better document. I don't believe we would have this document if the board had passed the LCAP the first time around. So sometimes it may not be pretty. It may not be the way we want it to be, but sometimes messy and ugly and what other adjectives you want to use, sometimes those are the adjectives that are necessary to get things right. I talked to Dr. Hurst a little earlier today. Right doesn't necessarily mean perfect, right? But because we started down this journey, we have a much better document. And I think that that better document is going to do what this is all about anyway, and that's help kids. So thank you to everybody, board members included, staff, community, for really getting behind this thing to make it a much better document.
Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, go ahead.
Thank you, President. First, I want to start by agreeing. I want to appreciate everybody who's been involved, all the good intentions from board members to families and staff. I appreciate the intent that I think Trustee Phillips is coming with. So I want to start with that. Although I do think that the votes that happened in June were irresponsible, because I think that we got lucky that the state did not have language to prepare us for it. We heard last night from Mr. Fine that the state could be ready to take away those $65 million from us if it happens in the future, and could have led to a felony and a misdemeanor of the board and staff. So I disagree with that. But I do have to say that the positive thing that came out of it is the transparency and the work, the collaboration between the parents and staff. I think that Dr. Hurst I thought you were going to share that one thing that is going to happen differently this year is that we have the right people in place. We have an incredible cabinet that I think is incredibly capable and smart. And then we have really amazing parent leaders who are not going to allow or let us drop the ball moving forward. So I think that those are the two resources that I think it's going to make things differently. So I just want to say that I appreciate our staff, that I appreciate the parent DLCAP leaders, and hopefully we can move this forward in the right direction. And I do think that we have to all start heading together however much we can. So thank you, President. That's all I have.
Thank you, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. I don't think anybody has a clear understanding of what CBO Moses went through when the majority of the board said no to the LCAP. The amount of work that was put on her shoulders and the amount of stress that was put on her shoulders. I'm not denying things that were put on other people's shoulders. I'm speaking specifically about CBO Moses. There is a huge difference from being courageous and being dangerous. It was dangerous not to vote for the LCAP because it was dangerous to then turn around and not be able to adopt a budget. And then it was dangerous to then leave our well-being in other people's hands. That was dangerous. What was courageous is navigating those waters, unprecedented waters that have never been done before, from a new CBO who stood up and said, okay, let's do it, and let's do it well in the defense of all students. And she and the cabinet worked diligently to ensure that what the county was asking for, and it did not know what it was asking for, we met every single finish line, crossed every single finish line. I appreciate your motion that you put forward. It's the same thing that we said we were going to do that night. All 6 points are what we said we were going to do that night. It is a sad moment that the community doesn't trust that, but it's an understandable moment at the same time. The hurt that the community has had because the promise is broken, we have to acknowledge. But we also don't have to carry the burden of other people's sins. When I voted yes on the LCAP, I did so with the understanding that it will not be dangerous because I know who I am and I know who the cabinet is and I know who the superintendent is. We were going to get the work accomplished because we do it for the betterment of the students of WCCUSD. Understand the difference between being courageous and being dangerous. The precedent that we set, the majority of the board set, was dangerous. The outcome is to the betterment of the students, but do not conflate the two. With that, I am complete. We are now moving to the vote. Trustee Reckler, your vote.
Reckler, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Christian, your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, your vote.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you very much. We are now moving to E3, the adoption of the 24-25 WCCUSD annual budget. Dr. Moses, this is your item. Go ahead, please, ma'am.
Thank you, President Smith Folds. Good evening. Good evening, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, Superintendent Hurst, and board members. A public hearing was held on August 27, 2024, during which staff provided an overview of the proposed budget delineating the significant revenue and expenditure components. The budget includes revenue proposals suggested by the governor and legislature, including the 1.07% cost of living adjustment. It also includes projected increases in expenditures. We're here this evening to ask that you consider adopting this budget for 24-25 school year. It is necessary to do this in order to conduct fiscal operations for our district. Budget adjustments may be recommended at the unaudited actuals in August. In September, based on the enacted state budget and/or as necessary during each interim reporting period. We recommend that you adopt the 24-25 annual budget, including the continuation of the fiscal solvency plan found in the executive summary.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Staff, do we have public comment?
Yes, Marco Brown, please unmute yourself.
Please show your face on the camera.
Danielle Jorgens, please unmute yourself.
Good evening again, board. I would just like to say, I think that the comments that you guys are making towards each other seem a little counterproductive. I would really like to see, with this new leaf turned, more togetherness and more direct collaboration amongst you. Clearly something is broken, was broken, it needs to get fixed. You guys got to figure this out and do it quick. Our school kids need better than that. So I hope that you all step up and work together, even if you don't like each other, which is obvious. Get over it. You guys are here to do a job, and you are elected to do a job and represent the citizens that have elected you. Please step up and do that. That's it.
Next public comment is Alon Harrison. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, board again. I like that y'all took a risk. I like that y'all did that because we take a risk as Black parents putting our kids in this district, and it's an over an 80% chance that our kids will die and graduate, or maybe not even graduate, get out uneducated. The fact that we had a board that would dare to do something different, to make history, to make, even if y'all had already did it, bring it forth, make the state, make the country, make the nation recognize that this whole educational system is failing Black kids. Not just our district, but this country is. Thank you for being different. Thank you for daring. Thank you for almost shutting down a whole district, because this is not an isolated incident. This goes on across our country, across our state. If you guys wouldn't have been bold enough to make a difference, Black children for sure wouldn't have got brought front work in this LCAP. Thank you. And I'm glad we worked it out and got it right. I'm complete.
Next public comment is Maisha Harris Gash. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening again. And to my classmate, the good Dr. Moses. With all seriousness, you were chosen for a time such as this. And so I want to thank you. I want to give you all your flowers for your time, for your patience, for your courageousness to take on this task, even when you walked into it. I know you had some idea what was ahead. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. I value you. And you know how we Eagles roll. We don't fly, we soar. And my good sister, you have soared in getting us through this period of time. So once again, I love you.
Our next public comment is Ellen Bellew. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for one more opportunity to speak. I did want to commend Dr. Moses. I do appreciate her presentations, and I find them very thoughtful and very clear, and I find her delivery very clear to the public. There was one part of the public hearing last night that sort of struck me as a strange exchange, and it related to her allusion to the future cuts that we'll be discussing this year. That Dr. McIntyre had said one thing, but she didn't necessarily adhere to that vision and was open to communication. And I think that's really important, to have dialogue around what those future cuts could be, because it's incredibly contentious in the district whenever we're cutting anything, and it leads to a large amount of public comment whenever we cut anything. So I just want to urge the board president to agendize budget issues as a priority and forefront in the discussion, so that those budget things don't happen at 10 p.m. and more people can see where the money's going and where the cuts are. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Roxanne Carrillo Garza. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Roxanne Carrillo Garza. I'm with Healthy Contra Costa. And, you know, we've been working on LCAP for years in collaboration with the district and collaboration with parents and students. And I left last night's board meeting. I was there in person with a heavy heart. And I want to say that I support what Zalan said. And I also want to support this idea that it was important to disrupt the status quo. And it's going to be important for you as a board, including the president, to disrupt the status quo going forward. We cannot any longer support a district that is not really transparent or communicating with parents and students. There were no students that were part of this LCAP and very few parents. The room was empty last night, and that should tell you something. So I tossed and turned all night thinking about last night's board meeting and the failure of this district to really work with its community around important issues, including STEAG, which has just been an awful experience for those parents. So I hope that.
Our next public comment is Yolanda Vera Allen. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, trustees and WCC community. First, I really want to thank our administrators and a special shout out to Ms. Summer and Ms. Catherine for really listening to us and working with us and trying to include within the LCAP our concerns and issues. I appreciate that. I appreciate our trustees who took that risk and said no more to continue status quo. Thank you, Ms. Roxanne, for that. It's important to create good trouble, especially when you feel that you're not being heard and that you're not being responded to and you're not given an equitable share of the resources that are there for us. It's a critical part. It's a part of our democratic process to disrupt these systems when they're not fair. We've had too many recommendations as parents just sit in your offices there, never being implemented. So no, we don't trust you because we have good reason for that. So thank you for stepping up this time.
Our next public comment is Anita Summerlin. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. I just want to say I appreciate you, Dr. Moses, for the work that you've done. I also appreciate Ms. Sigler and the entire educational team for the work that they've done. But I want to hold us accountable to making sure that we are accountable to the standards and the outcomes for our children. We need to make sure that our schools are held accountable to making sure that our kids know how to read, our kids are able to meet math standards. We need to see the data. We need to make sure that our teachers and our schools are held accountable to the data. I think that is extremely important. And I just want to make sure that we hold that at the center because the outcomes for our kids are important to all of us. And we want to make sure that the district holds that important as well. Thank you.
Our last public comment is Denise Smith. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, friends. Thank you, Demetrio and Christian, for the written amendment. Appreciate that. I just want to quote John Lewis. John Lewis, who led and helped organize many of the civil rights movements. John Lewis said, "Get in trouble, necessary trouble, to help redeem the soul of America, and never be afraid to make some noise and get in trouble, necessary trouble." So when you either do something or you continue to talk about it. Actions speak louder than words, right? And what you do speaks so loudly that we cannot hear what you're saying. So while I do understand the risks that the board had to take to ensure that the values of this community were uplifted, I am also thankful for the grace and mercy of God that covered us and allowed us to get to the place where we can move forward. You guys are all appreciated.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so very much. We are now headed to, I'm sorry, let's see, did we do questions? No, let's go to questions. 3 questions apiece. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to come back to the fiscal solvency plan for a moment. And, you know, as we discussed, these are numbers that are a year old. And so, I guess I never realized that before, but, you know, the revenues and the expenses have changed significantly. What is the date that this will be updated to reflect the current reality? And is the 7 million in reductions hardwired, or do you expect that to shift? And is your estimate that it gets bigger or smaller?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Reckler. We are sticking with the plan that was adopted in June of 2023 in order to see that agreement through, in order to reduce the structural deficit. I want to point out that even with the reductions that we plan, we are still heavily dipping into reserves. We're dipping into reserves at the tune of $11 million next year, even though we expect to have an additional 7 million in cuts. So we will need to reevaluate the plan, but when we reevaluate the plan, I believe that we'll need to look at ways to operate leaner in order to continue to address this issue of fiscal, of structural deficit. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because with things like the addition of our TK classes, TK becoming universal, that adds more students to our district. I'm also hopeful because I see the efforts of staff to increase our attendance and increase our ADA for the students that we do have enrolled. We have a continuing concern that enrollment is declining across the state and enrollment is declining in our district. But if we work really hard to improve the attendance rates, I think that's going to greatly impact our fiscal solvency plan as well. So I look forward to a multitude of solutions that include both increasing revenue through our attendance efforts and evaluating our fiscal position in order to make sure we're each year contributing to efforts that will decrease that structural deficit with the intention to arrive at a balanced budget for our district and our students so that we no longer have this worry of fiscal solvency impacting our decisions at this level. So we are going to continue to work together. We'll work together as a cabinet. The budget committee is going to start its work soon. We're starting the implementation of a timeline that was discussed in March. And it includes a deep dive analysis first of what we're expending and look at data for our programs. So I think we can bring this back at a later time with a more detailed answer, but those are the pertinent issues that I know we'll need to address in the immediate future.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was just one, if I might just ask one more.
It was actually three. So you said the date. What's the date? You said it's 7 million hardwired. First question was what's the date? Second question is 7 million hardwired. Third question is, was it going to be bigger or smaller? Thank you. Trustee Phillips, you had a question?
I do. Thank you. Dr. Hurst, you're smiling. I'm smiling. And it's not a rhetorical question, but I have to ask it. I always ask it. Is this budget balanced?
I will actually yield to Dr. Moses to answer the question on whether it's balanced.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. I think Trustee Phillips, your question is an interesting one because we have to think about what is a balanced budget. We have several components to this budget. We have the unrestricted operating fund, which is the fund that we're experiencing the structural deficit. We have our restricted funds, and we have these projections that are estimates in the moment. Is it balanced? Obviously not, because we're relying on reserves in order to meet all of our expenditure and our financial obligations. However, is it a budget that will allow us to meet all of those obligations? Absolutely, because of the reliance of reserves and the work of staff to reduce the expenditures, we can operate this budget. And in that way, it is balanced because we can meet the needs. However, we have some work to do in order to ensure that our revenue and our expenditures are balanced out. So in that way, no, that's not balanced because we're looking at additional revenue coming from our reserves.
Thank you for clarifying that. It is not a balanced budget. I appreciate that.
That's it, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, go ahead.
Thank you, President. I have two questions, Dr. Moses. Going back to the fiscal solvency plan, could you share with us why are we not updating it as we get new information? And if we are going to update it, when could we see an updated plan? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. I think the first answer is that we made a commitment to this initial plan that we need to see through. And the second answer to that question is that the assumptions that build our budget change from year to year, from interim to interim. I think that as we dig into the work of identifying these new reductions, we also dig into the work of trying to clarify our future budgetary picture by rechecking or our official numbers for our ADA, things that we've had a slight increase in enrollment better than what we projected, which is great. We need to figure that into those interim reports. So I think the short answer to what next in terms of adjusting this fiscal solvency plan, it is first get the job done of completing this one, continue to analyze, and then we'll create a new plan addressing our projected future need. But that has to be done with budgetary analysis, program analysis, and pulling all data related to these decisions at multiple tables in order to get input to find out next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. President, that was it. Thank you so much.
We are now to a motion. Is there a motion?
President, I move that we adopt the presented budget for the 24-25 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead. Let's see. We'll go with Trustee Reckler, then we'll move over to Trustee Phillips.
Thank you. So for the Budget Committee, I would encourage you to dig into this plan as because information changes and your reductions may get better or they may get worse. And so I think it's really important that even though there is a plan and we've, it should react to the current reality. So I think that's really important to dig into and make adjustments to this or look to make adjustments to this. The second is I would encourage a couple of budget town halls where everybody can come out and just ask any oddball question about the budget that they want. A couple of them across the district in different places and just give people a chance to learn a little more. School finance is extremely, extremely, extremely complicated. Many of the things that happen here are not the district's fault. Oops, the legislature just, oh, the California state budget just lost $80 billion. Well, guess what? So understanding those tenets of budgeting and also just opening up the doors and just letting people ask questions, I think is a good way to involve people in the process. And again, I thank you very much for the work.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, did you have comments?
I do.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to? Okay, it's up. So, first, Dr. Moses, I appreciate your comment about this being a workable budget, which is a different thing, but a workable budget. And I understand that it takes money to operate this district. I am going to be voting no, however, as I vote no on every budget, because I think that we should run a balanced budget, barring an emergency like a pandemic. That's not the situation here, so I'll be voting no, but I do understand your comment. I do want to say something though about my vote and how I vote in particular situations, including maybe controversial situations. So just a little bit about me. I was blessed to attend and graduate from one of the best law schools in this country. I'm a practicing attorney and I have been one for at least 20 years. I graduated or finished law school when I was 24. I have a constitutional right, a right to vote my conscience. And if I vote some way that somebody does not like, that does not mean that it is illegal, that it is a felony or a misdemeanor. And anybody who would tell an elected official that is bullying that elected official. Now, other folks in this room may not know that, but I do, and I don't appreciate it. I will be voting no this evening for the reason that I just said. But when I do vote, I am confident about my vote because I spent years and still studied the law.
President Smith Folds, we were in comments.
Sorry, anyone else have comments? Go ahead, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy.
Thank you. I think that the last couple months has been really rough on this board. I mean, since you get elected, it's difficult. It's a difficult position. We never do everything to everybody's liking. And there's a lot at stake in every decision that we make and every time that we come to a board meeting or outside board meetings. The public also knows that we have a divided board. We don't all go out and have ice cream and, you know, whatever else we would have together. I think that I constantly go back to trying to center us on why we're all here. And I think that somehow we have to start doing that at every board meeting. I think that there are people on this board who have really good intentions. And I think that we have amazing staff and amazing parents. So I think that there are ways that we're gonna get there. I think that the budget specifically is a really difficult conversation for me to have because I think that people ask me, why are we not 100% balanced? And the reality is that if we were to be asked to cut $60 million this year, there's no way we would be able to accomplish that overnight. Because what would that mean for a system like ours, that every dollar goes to students, is that we would have to close schools, we would have to cut teachers, we would have to cut central staff, right? Maybe our $800 stipend that we get as boards, right? To contribute, like that would have to happen quickly. And that is the reason why I think sometimes it takes longer in an educational system. And it's not as easy because even cutting $1 million is painful because it hurts our schools. So I think that's what I want the public to keep in mind. It's not that we don't have a will, right? Like at home, it's easy to say, well, we're not going to have steak. We're going to have hamburger helper, which is one of my favorites, for the rest of the month, right? But for a school district, is the difference of feeding our students and having lights and resources. So thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you so much. Dr. Moses, thank you to you and your staff for all the hard work that you do with the budget. School budgets are incredibly complicated. So thank you so much for being the most transparent CBO that we have had in this district. I will stand 10 toes down on that. Thank you for when you are with the budget subcommittee for being able to answer and being willing to answer every question that is presented to you. Thank you for when you come to these board meetings, being able to speak with the skill of a teacher to scaffold this very dense information so that we all understand it. And thank you for standing up to people who you shouldn't have to stand up to say no to. Your no is your no and your yes is your yes. And it's very hard to be lonely in that, which that is, I believe, one of the loneliest positions on cabinet because you hold the checkbook. And you have to tell people who you have to work with every single day, no. And you have to tell people who come to you from the community, no. And no is a complete sentence, but it's also one of the hardest sentences. So I appreciate that. And I know your colleagues appreciate that as well. I have complete faith in you to continue to help right this ship. I know that if we follow and we also be curious and think out of the box, that we will continue to provide the best education for WCC USD. I also know that this is an issue bigger than us. This is an issue that the state and the federal government have never funded public education the way that it should. So if we want to do the best for our children, we have to be more creative. And I think that with the cabinet that we have and the staff that we have and the community that we have, we can come up with some really great ideas. Dr. Hurst, thank you for your leadership when it comes to budget. I would ask us to continue to do what we know works, which is bring the budget back to the board and have these conversations and educate the board about how school budgets work and the impact of those decisions. I am complete. We are now headed to the vote. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
No.
Thank you. Trustee Christian, go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, go ahead.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you so very much. We are now moving to item E4, provisional internship permit, the PIP. Dr. Johnson, this is your item.
Thank you, President Smith-Folds and members of the board. The provisional internship permit allows newly hired teachers to enter into an internship program.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Johnson. We are now moving to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Thank you. Board, do we have any questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
President, I move that we approve our provisional internship permits.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any comments? Seeing no comments, we'll move straight to the vote. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Reckler, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Yes.
Excuse me. Trustee Christian, go ahead. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, go ahead.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you very much. We are now moving to E5, Educational Code 44258.3, variable term waivers. Dr. Johnson, I believe this is your item, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again, President Smith-Folds. The variable term waivers authorize the school district to assign teachers based on their subject matter knowledge.
Thank you so very much. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Thank you. Board, any questions? Seeing none. Excuse me. Do we have a motion?
President, I move that we approve the variable term waivers.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any comments? Seeing none, let's go to the vote. Trustee Reckler, your vote?
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips?
Yes, ma'am.
Christian?
Yes.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right, thank you so very much. We are now moving to our discussion item. This is F1 Early Literacy Support Block Grant. Ms. Catherine, this is your item.
Yes, thank you so much. So tonight we are excited to present an overview, program data, and key learnings of our Early Literacy Support Block Grant, which is sunsetting. And I'm delighted to bring up Sanji Bell, our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment for TK through 12 grade. She supports our district in early literacy. She is over our preschool program, TK Humanities, and OASIS. So take it away, Director Bell.
That title is still very scary, but thank you. Good evening, Board President Smith-Folds, Dr. Hurst, and members of the board, along with West Contra Costa community. My name is Sanji Bell, and I am the Director of Curriculum Instruction and the other departments that my illustrious boss has detailed for us this evening. And I'm here to discuss with you the Early Literacy Block Grant. So in October, we had a visit from the county office from Kuvang, who has been our point person for the early literacy support block grant. And she is from the county office of Sacramento, and she has provided our 7 sites actually with technical assistance along with professional assistance with this particular grant. And October of last year, she came for the first time because our grant started during a time when it was really not possible for people to do the walkthroughs and do the work directly with our schools because of our health conditions. So she came in 2023 and had a chance to visit with all of us, all of our school sites. She met with site leaders and vice principals and coaches and teachers. And we had a chance to talk about the work of this grant over the last 3 years. and talk about what early literacy really looks like and means here with these 7 schools in West Contra Costa. So next slide. The 7 sites that were supported from the state with the ALSB block grant were Bayview, Coronado, Downer, King, Lincoln, Nystrom, and Steege. Next slide. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the highlights from our visit. What we could say overall from visiting these 7 sites is that there was a lot of excitement around what teachers were doing and how our students were learning in early literacy. Most of these school sites had done a lot of work around creating their literacy plans. And from the sites that we visited and what we actually observed, they were sticking very closely to their literacy plans, holding with fidelity their foundational literacy block, collaboration. And what was, I think, the most wonderful was the student excitement. We got a chance to see our students in grades kinder through 2nd really excited about demonstrating their literacy skills. We got a chance to see a lot of program fidelity that really gives students an opportunity to showcase what they learned. Next slide. Oh, and I'm sorry, that was King Elementary School. So what's most important is that at the end of the grant, of course, we all want to know how our students are performing. Early on, each school site creating their literacy plan picked their own metrics, in terms of how they would measure student growth. Fortunately now in year 3, we have full implementation of our new assessment tool, which is iReady, which allows us to look district-wide at our students instead of trying to paint a picture with multiple data sources. At the beginning of this grant, many of our schools were using either STAR, some were using DIBELS, some of them may have even had their own particular metrics for looking at early literacy. But for the presentation tonight for our 7 schools, we are focusing on our most recent tool, which is iReady, and looking at our initial District 1, district too many times tonight, looking at our, our initial district assessment, and then looking at the last one. So with iReady, we offer students an opportunity to showcase their abilities beginning, middle, and end of the year. So this would be a comparison between our first and last assessment. So our first school that we have here is Bayview. And Bayview, in the data that we have displayed here, it shows iReady's 5-point mapping system. This shows you students who are at or above grade level, which would be green. Students that are approaching or that we have the expectation will be in those high levels are in the regular green. Yellow would be those students that are one grade level below. The red would be students that are 2 grade levels below, and the crimson red would be those students that are 3 or more grade levels below. So if you look at Bayview, which is indicative of most of our schools, kindergarten probably made the most significant growth. We see green in comparison, if you're looking very closely, that each of our schools, and you'll see this replicated, is that we've all made progress in from the beginning of the year to the end of the year when we're looking at just specifically our reading, ropes, the left side that pertains specifically to phonics and phonemic awareness, letter recognition, the basic mechanics of reading and students being able to navigate text. And also what I want to point out is that we exclude kindergarten from their first assessment, and we capture their data mid-year and end of the year. Diagnostic is the word I was trying to pull out. That was what I mean when I say D1. So this data is what you will see for each of the 7 schools, diagnostic 1 in comparison with our final diagnostic. And with Bayview in particular, if we delve deeper, you'll find that our kindergartners made a 37% increase, moving from either dark green or green, moving towards dark green or green. We also had a 46% increase in first grade, with our students moving into the green or dark green category, and that our second graders made improvement in about 13%, moving from green to dark green. And they also decreased the number of students 2 or more levels below by 9%, which is also very important that we're looking at those students who may have been underperforming, that they are also moving forward. Next slide. So again, we see similar trends with Coronado. They have a 40% increase in kindergarten from where they started off in diagnostic 1 with an increase of 40%, and also 34% for third grade, with students scoring 2 grade levels below, increasing their reading ability. Next slide. I don't have my glasses on. I think we went to the next slide. Downer would be next. Downer also made increases with their kindergarten students in terms of moving students into the green. And also they made tremendous growth with improving the reading capabilities for students in second grade that were 2 or more grade levels below. This is at least 28%. Next slide. And again, we see this with King with a 17% increase in kindergarten, and 30% decrease in students in grade 3, with students that were reading at 2 or more grade levels below. Next slide. With Lincoln, we see the same trends where our kindergartners are very strong with a 22% increase, and a 28% decrease with our third graders who are 2 or more grade levels below. So there's a lot of movement in that lower red area that we're most concerned about. Next slide. And here we have Nystrom that made tremendous gains across all grade levels. 29% increase in kinder, 24 in first grade, 24 in second grade, and 26 increase in third grade, moving students into the green and dark green categories of being at or above reading level. Next slide. And here we have Stige, and we know that Stige has had a tremendous amount of challenges this year, but we also see that in their kindergarten, they made significant growth or growth that we need to acknowledge in kindergarten with a 23% increase and 27% decrease in students in first grade that were scoring in the red with 2 or more grade levels below. Next slide. So with this particular grant, some of the trends that we were able to lift is that the ELSB sites that were able to maintain their literacy coach, because that was a big push as for who would be leading this work and supporting students. These particular sites with coaches that were able to support data analysis, support with the activities around foundational skills block, holding that time sacred for students on a daily basis, had significant growth. These are the schools where teachers seem to feel most empowered. There was a lot of work around collaboration and really looking at what happens next. We've had conversation this evening about evaluating data, but what is also necessary in partnering with once you've evaluated data is what are our next steps? How are we moving students forward? And also within the foundational skills block, that we're not leaving children places once they have met the particular goals that we are looking for them to meet, that they are moving along as they show progress. There was a lot of discussion around our SIPS intervention program or professional development that many of our teachers have participated in. And this is the curriculum that most of our school sites with the ELSB grant are utilizing during the foundational skills time. And the focus is primarily on focusing on those early intervention skills around early literacy to promote student reading. Now, our mitigations primarily lie in the fact that many of these schools, although they were working very diligently, had significant staffing deficits. And this contributed to some sites not being able to maintain their coaches for the remainder of the school year. Maybe a coach had to participate in a classroom for a longer period of time than was anticipated. And some sites had significant staffing outages in the primary grades. So the recommendations from the state as our grant sunsetted, were that we continued to be vigilant around the reading rope, that they could actually tell and see the improvements that students were making because we were making the phonemic side of the reading rope a priority. But they also thought that we needed to bulk up and focus on the other side of the reading rope, which is our reading comprehension development, vocabulary development. Having opportunities for students to give voice to what they've learned or comprehended through reading. They wanted us to pay attention to the heavy lifting of instruction. And this partners with our current work with our IPG tool, the Instructional Practice Guide, which is a walkthrough tool that many of our schools are currently utilizing to evaluate our instructional practices. And this is something that we recognize as a district, that we're listening to who is doing the heavy lifting, who's doing the most work in the room. And are we challenging our students to do that? And lastly, alignment in terms of curriculum district-wide for continuity. Next slide. So moving forward, we have another opportunity to support schools with early literacy. Will be with the Literacy Coach Reading Specialist Grant. And this will support 7 schools total, but out of that 7, 3 of our schools that started off with the ELSB grant will continue in this work. The Literacy Coaching Reading Specialist Grant focuses on schools with 95% unduplicated students. These are students that fall into the category of EL learners, foster students, and free or reduced lunch. And this is a grant that will run through this year through 2027. And we are excited about the additional schools that will be able to participate. Those will be Grant, Verde, Perry's, and Chavez, in addition to Lincoln, King, and Steege. So that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do. Our first public comment is Jean Kinster. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Anita Summerlin, please unmute yourself.
Hi, yes. While I see that there is the iReady data, iReady doesn't compare to the data from our CAS test. There is no correlation that was presented on the iReady data in relation to the CAS data. I know that kids don't start testing for CAS until 3rd grade. However, I would like to see some data that is showing us something that is showing our kids are on track for the CAS. So if there's some additional data that can be presented in relation to the correlation of the iReady data in relation to that, that would be helpful for parents to know. Because iReady, while those stretch goals are great, they're not everything.
Thank you for your question or your comment. To your point, we don't,
I'm sorry, Ms. Bell, we don't respond to public
oh,
comment.
sorry.
No,
So
it's
sorry.
okay. Sorry, President Smith, for jumping in. Thank you.
Comment.
Our next public comment is Alon Harrison. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, my concern is I didn't hear you mention African American children, and when you labeled that, because our children come into the district, I think it was told to me 33,000 words behind. And for you not to mention them or even consider them in the category of high needs is very concerning to me. Because we have our population of African American students is decreasing, and some of them are still living in the community, just not sending their children to our district. And I think we have to change that early and often. So I think making sure that Black and African American people can enroll their children early in our district with good outcomes, I think should be brought forward, and the data ensuring that it should happen. And I don't know about these tests for the 7 schools that you show, but I think we should ensure district-wide we're doing well by our little people in the beginning. I'm complete. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Yolanda Vieira Allen. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry, every time I push the button, it muted me again. I just, I came coming tonight from a back to school night at Middle College High School, and I had a couple of different parents talk to me about iReady, and one particularly was also a teacher in the district and really wanted to stress, and it's so important that if we're going to use iReady, then make it available to the schools so that they can access it. It can't just be relied on school site budgets because many of our schools don't have that resource to be able to afford it. If we're going to invest so much of our goals and actions on it, then it needs to be available, the full program, and not just the assessment, but the learning pathway, so that each of our students have their learning path that's designed for them and the pieces that they need. So please, as you are looking at curriculum, especially for early childhood, make it accessible to all. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much for the presentation. We are now going to questions. Board, are there questions? 3 questions. Go ahead, Trustee Reckler. You have questions, Trustee Reckler?
I do. I'm sorry. I just got distracted. I thought they were going to time me or something.
3 questions. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So there's been a lot of talk and strategic plan about systems and structures and standards and alignment. So from this work, what is being pulled away and standardized for these schools and really for all elementaries?
I want to make sure I understood your question. You said from what was reported, what's being standardized?
Yeah, so from the work that was done by these schools, like what was discovered, what worked, and what is going to get blown out system-wide, as improved practice.
So one of the things that we are working on in our department is to continue to offer SIPs district-wide. I don't have the exact number, but I would say we have fewer schools that need full implementation as opposed to those that don't. I feel like our site leaders are really understanding the need to build out a foundational skills block. And that I feel like our leaders are being more myopic and digging a little bit deeper forensically about all of our student groups as opposed to looking at the 10,000, the 10,000 foot lens. And district-wide, we have students that need specific intervention and care around early literacy that can't be overlooked. We had a wide range of brand new teachers and principals to attend the summer during our summer offering for professional development with SIPs. And we are currently messaging out to all of our site leaders so that they can know who has attended all of these trainings at their school site so that they can build capacity with grade level teams, because that is one of the core necessities for SIPs is that you can't do it in isolation, that whole grade levels need to participate to have a site-wide foundational skills block. So number one is to get all of our schools on board with offering this intervention block. Secondly, I think that this calls for the need for literacy coaches. I know this is something that we have had historically, but we see more and more school sites using their funding to try and implement this. This is something also with the next group of schools that will be using this through the upcoming grant that is coming. We are training teachers to be reading specialists so that they can be deployed out throughout the district to support schools with early literacy and becoming reading specialists for more than just our schools that are in specific need that the state sees, but what we see as a district. In our office, I'm also over the Office of African American Student Achievement, is that we are looking more forensically at our African American student achievement and working on strategies to build out academic support providers, which we know worked for the Mission 7 schools. I know we mentioned those 7 quite a bit. But the goal for this year is to build that out and work with each school site with their budgets to see if they have people on their campus that are ready to work on small group instruction in areas that we know not only support early literacy, but those other parts of the rope that the state said should be our focus, which would be working on comprehension and vocabulary. I think the most stark difference that I think we will see this year, and that one thing that we're very excited about, is that we can see that many of our schools that were understaffed, and honestly, if we really look at our data, this was really what was behind, if we did not make the push that we think that we should have, or the gains, was that many of these schools now are fully staffed. Walking around this year, and maybe that has been the excitement that people have felt, is that HR has worked very, very diligently, site leaders have worked very diligently to ensure that we get clinicians in front of students, because without teachers in place, it's very difficult to be able to ensure that we have people in front of students that are delivering consistent, rigorous instruction that we know supports our students, in particular our African-American students. When they have this on a consistent basis, then we see those gains. And I want to really just kind of give a shout out to these school sites that have been holding this down while we have been waiting on getting staffing, and they have really been creative around still having gains. Maybe we didn't make the ones that we expected, but each school made some gains under the circumstances. So I think that we will see a lot of things happen this year that we may have not seen historically, with just some of the small changes, beginning with staffing, district-wide attention to an intervention block, and doing these things with fidelity.
Thank you. For this group of schools, which I'm going to assume is going to stay together as a cohort plus the others that you're adding, will concrete measurable goals, both quantitative and qualitative, be set for them? Or is this just is the SPSA their goals? If that makes sense.
So I think the initial step is the site plan, and it's imperative for each site leader to understand that they need to set these goals. I think what we will see partnered, and I know in our department, what we'll be working on is going back to just the basic cycle of inquiry. Like, do you know who's on your campus? Do you have a systematic way of looking at data? And then what is your plan of action after you've evaluated that data? We've talked about that a lot tonight. I don't think there's anything particularly new. I think that we are resurrecting those things and doing them with fidelity. And that is how we get those particular goals. We encourage all of our site leaders to be able to articulate and look at their site plans. In the department for OASA, we are looking at site plans specifically to look at goals that site leaders have set for African-American students and working with them around accountability, and just for them to hold this as being paramount in your instructional practices. We have numbers of student groups that we need to know how they're performing. We've heard it mentioned here from the board and from the community that we want some mechanism for progress monitoring student achievement. And I think that's what we'll be working on this year.
Okay, and then finally, money. So could you describe how money was spent through this grant, and then carryover, and does that get returned to the state, or does it get rolled back over?
You're asking about for the ELSB grant? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the budget, I believe that the state allocated to school sites was approximately 3 million. That was distributed over the 7 sites. I believe if you look at the webpage for where the ELSB is housed, it will tell you the expenditures, like what was allocated per site and how much is left over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, we are now moving to nope, it's just discussion item. Thank you so much, Ms. Bell. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your
We are
time.
gonna do comments. So we need 2-minute comments. If you have comments, please raise your hand. Thank you. We'll start here and then we'll go around. These are comments about this item. This is not board comments yet. This is comments about this item. So we're just doing comments about this, and then we'll do board comments. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was good to hear about this work and the depth of it. I do want to encourage that literacy is a pillar in the strategic plan, its own separate little bubble with deep actions underneath it. And then I'd also like to encourage that this particular block of schools, this special, that they have very clear and specific goals, both quantitative and qualitative, and that because so not only are you meeting goals, but also trying to share practice, because I think that this was both, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that this was both to, of course, help them because they were the lowest in achievement, but also to figure some things out so that you could blow it up and send it out into other schools. So that should somehow be captured in the way of metrics and goals and future plans. And then I think there's probably some money left over if there is. And so I'd just like to know what happens to it. First, like, You know, like, what'd you spend and what'd you get your big bangs out of your dollars? It was probably literacy coaches. But if there's leftover money, what happens to it? Does the district get to keep it or, excuse me, does it have to go back to the state? And thank you very much. This was informative.
Thank you. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, you have a comment?
Thank you, President. Thank you so much for the presentation. I also learned quite a bit. I have a lot of concern, actually, first an appreciation. I really appreciate that these sites are fully staffed. I mean, that's actually a big deal. I can't think of a year where it was fully staffed at the beginning of the school year for these specific sites. So I'm really thankful for that. And what I would like for us to figure out together is the retention problem. Because I think that eventually we have full staffed schools, but then people are not staying at these schools, right? So our recommendation I have is that this presentation goes to the solutions team so that labor can be part of the solution. I certainly have ideas that I would like to present, but I think that it has to come from all of you and labor, because I do see that as a huge problem in continuing or improving the culture and the academic achievement for these schools. Not a single teacher is left at Bayview from when I taught there only a few years ago, right? Not even classified, I believe. So that to me is a huge indication of what's happened, right? So I appreciate that it was called out, but I do think that that's a huge problem because we're not able to continue the improvements as people leave, right? So that's it. Thank you so much for the rest. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are now moving to, and thank you again for the presentation, Ms. Bell. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're now moving to item G, comments from the Board of Education. We can put 2 minutes on the clock. We'll start to my right and then work our way around. Trustee Reckler, go ahead, wait for the clock and go ahead.
So I'm addressing the comments made by Trustee Gonzalez Hoy and President Smith Folds at the end of last night's meeting. Last night, I offended both of you for clapping after Mike Fine finished speaking and for off camera, on a break, asking for his autograph. I clapped because in my opinion, he did a great job. He was extremely well prepared, thorough in outlining consequences, and I learned from him. I did not agree with everything that he said, but I appreciate his advice and coming this long way to deliver it. Off camera, on break, I asked for his autograph. I want you to know it was a joke. He's famous in the world of school finance. I look up to him. I'd never met him before. He's kind of a rock star, and I thought it was funny. You did not for both actions, and I take your feedback seriously, and I apologize sincerely. That being said, the manner in which the displeasure was expressed and what came after is very offensive to me. I do not accept being addressed like that and request that a civil style of interaction be employed that better models communication and conflict resolution best practices. Please ask, why did you do that? It bothered me. And then please allow me to respond. It might lead to meaningful conversation and perhaps a greater understanding of each other's actions and motives. There are ways to express displeasure that are constructive. I request all board members and the superintendent, myself included, review and internalize the board's guidance on civility that can be found on pages 11 and 12 of the board's governance handbook, which was adopted in May of this year. We do not have to be broken. We don't, but it takes all of us, myself included, to put it back together.
Any other comments? Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
So my youngest child, Amanzi, started first grade. And so he is the last child that was at home. My daughter, who, attends the virtual school, she's actually doing the hybrid at the virtual. So she has been on campus for biology and for Spanish. So all four of my children are now attending a district school. And so, as one of your parents, I would like to say thank you very much, not just to you, but to all of the staff members for the opening of school. I asked earlier for examples of concrete improvements, and that is definitely one. So I want to say kudos to all of you for that. The second thing that I want to say to you all is know your worth. And I mean that statement to my fellow board members, the superintendent, and all the staff. Know your worth. There is a lot of talent in this room. That doesn't mean that we're perfect. That doesn't mean that we will always get everything right. Heck, my wife knows I get things wrong all the time. But we need to know our worth, right? And we can disagree amongst each other on certain items and whatnot. But at the end of the day, there is talent in this room. And we should never let anyone from wherever come into this space and act like there is not talent in this room. We can have a civil exchange of ideas, but we should really demand that folks who come into this space respect us. I wish I had been here last night with you all, but I had to work late. But we all need to know our worth because there is a lot of talent in this room.
Thank you so very much, Trustee Christian.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you to all the staff and everybody that's in here. Appreciate the hard work you do. And also, I want to welcome back everybody into this school year. Our teachers, our classified staff, our students, everyone. Welcome back. And also, I want to say on last week, which is last week was the first week of school. And so I want to say Dr. Hurst and myself and others, we were there at Steege Elementary to make sure that everything went well. And so, so we were there from Monday all the way to Friday, I believe. And also I want to say is that we're working on Steege to get it fully rebuilt. We're looking for the other funding to be able to fund the rest of to add to the rest of the money to get it rebuilt. So we're working on it and we are connecting to different sources. Just wanted to say, with the LCAP, we passed the LCAP and now we're moving forward and that we can do making sure that our students in this district receive the resources they need. And so with that being said, welcome back everybody. And we just have a lot to do and a lot of challenges, but we work through our challenges to become better every time we come together to discuss the issues of our district. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you. And I apologize if I start coughing and the water went down the wrong way. First, I wanted to address what Trustee Reckler mentioned. I wanted to appreciate her apology. I do take the apology, and I also would like to appreciate share my apology for how I approached the situation, Trustee Reckler. I am sorry for my tone. And I am a calm person, as people know. And I was deeply offended. And I think that I should have approached it differently. So I do want to sincerely apologize to you for how I approached it. And I also would like to share that I do think that there's some explicit bias that sometimes comes off with the way that you approach things. So I also would like to express that as you express you know, we all need to grow in civility. I will try to grow in that area, and I hope that you'll take my feedback in that piece as well. Second piece I wanted to mention is that I was offended tonight with a public comment. I usually never address public comment. Two individuals called and shared that the president was doing things wrong, specifically for concentrating on anti-racism in our district. And I think that for anyone who is not Black or brown to call out the board president, who is a Black woman and who is leading the anti-racist work, is offensive and ridiculous. I usually take every comment for good feedback, no matter what it is, even if it's something I'm doing wrong. In this case, it was incredibly offensive, and it goes against what we are trying to do. So I want to give flowers to the president because she's holding a lot of hats. She's fighting an anti-racism fight that should have happened a long time ago, but we are now finally addressing. And a lot of it is put on her shoulders. And I always say she's the most courageous and she's the most involved. For those that don't know, she subs, she volunteers, she attends field trips for people who don't have a volunteer. None of us can do that. And she does that, and she puts that first before sometimes her family or work. So to all those people, please change your approach as well, because that is not true. And our president is an incredible educator and advocate for Black and brown students. So I want to say thank you, President, for all your work. And I apologize to the board for going over my time. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. White supremacy shows up when the most marginalized are labeled racist, aggressive, and the oppressor. But another can come in and have a very unprofessional tone and get stickers or patted on the back. Mike Fine has said nothing that Dr. Kim Moses has not already told us. But this board chooses to listen to those who are closest to the standard of acceptance. White supremacy shows up when the most marginalized believe that it is historic or heroic for them to destroy, while you literally have people in positions of power choosing to see you and turn up the volume on your issues more than ever before. Dr. Hurst, the cabinet, the majority of this board are disrupting the status quo and dismantling the very system that have historically kept Black and brown students from excelling. When you start throwing rocks, whether you are white or Black or brown, when you start throwing rocks at this board, it's okay, but aim at the people who refuse to go to anti-racist retreats. Aim at the people who refuse to vote for anti-racist policy and statement. Aim at the people who abuse and torture cabinet, staff, and the superintendent. You have an expectation and a want for me to play nice. Your nice is centered around a norm that I am disrupting and dismantling at every part. Callers question me doing my job. That's not okay. I've done an excellent job and I will continue to do so. I am nice. I'm nice enough to tell people the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. Words are a blueprint for action, and I mean every last one of my words. I am complete. We are now going to move to the next scheduled Board of Education meeting. A joint CBOC and Board of Education meeting is scheduled for September the 9th, 2024 at Dejan. And the next regular board meeting is scheduled for September the 11th, 2024 at Lavanya Dejan. It is now 9:04 and this board meeting is adjourned.